Great, thanks, Lee. Really appreciate the opportunity to spend time not only with you, but your all of the participants on this call and the folks that will end up listening to this on the webinar. It's really special to be part of this and really endeavor to look at what it is as founders and entrepreneurs that we need to do to be able to build a high-performance team. And I do want to start out, I was telling Lee this a little bit earlier, I do have an outrageous American accent at this point after spending 20 years in the States and 10 in Canada, but I am a Brit by birth and have spent a lot of time around the globe, various places. Really, and the principles of leadership and the principles of really having a highly performing business and team transcend culture and transcend organizations. Some of the principles we're going to look at tonight are really universal. So definitely want to share my experience and some of the things we found in working with not only small entrepreneurial companies, but all the way up to these global multinationals that are extremely complex. So thanks for having me, and Lee, thanks so much for being my eyes and ears on this webinar. So I'm gonna jump straight in, and the title is a little provocative. Are we as founders lone wolves or team players? And I happen to take note of some of my characteristics as an entrepreneur and founder, and what makes me great at growing a business is not necessarily so great when it comes to building teams. And this is my profile. I would love people on this webinar to look, whether you recognize any of these. As an entrepreneur, freedom is a core driver of mine. I play in the risk and reward economy, which means, in my world, I look at risk differently. I take risk not only personally and professionally. I take capital risk, and I expect a certain amount of reward for that. And sometimes reward comes in standard ways that I can measure, and sometimes reward comes in other ways. I have a never give up attitude. I don't necessarily understand why people don't do what they say they're going to do, or why they give up when it gets rough. If you talk to my team, relentless. I have both an interesting blend and a strong ego that keeps me alive, and then some insecurities that whir away in the background. I have a massive inner critic that tends to act like a steamroller in the background, and a great case of ADHD, which explains some of my risk profile. One of my coaches says that I'm actually antisocial because I ask questions inside a relationship that most people would never dare ask. And I think feedback issues is probably a little over the top, but I have a particular way of looking at feedback, and I know I'm never going to like it. And so all of the things that make me, I've done 7 startups in my business career, 4 of which I'll talk about, with people, and 3, I'm definitely still in coaching and therapy for. And I'm a pretty good entrepreneur. As a teammate and as someone that builds a high-performance team, especially in my business, that has been the area of growth for me. So I look at why would I want to build a team around me. The first one is because it allows me and allows us as entrepreneurs or founders or business owners to really drive a different level of results. It's impossible for us to drive results if we don't have a team of people. And then there's this whole notion of personal and professional growth. My team's going to spot things, and a team of people are going to spot things that are really useful nuggets for my personal growth. Just these sometimes seem to be contradictory. How do I be relentless about driving results and then also keep an eye on and be open to personal growth? It's on the surface two completely different skill sets that are in conflict. And so how do I create these results inside the business, make sure it's doing what it needs to do, and consciously work on my personal and professional relationship-based and communication-based opportunities to be self-aware and really go to work on that. Because most of the entrepreneurs and founders we've worked with are not only have a preference for one over the other, they typically have somewhere in their career figured out how to generate results, and it's the growth associated with a team that's super important. So, how do we scale our business? How do you scale your business? By hiring the right talent. I am not necessarily good at hiring people, and I have great people around me. It just takes more than my preference. I found out early on in my career I would hire people just like me, and then we'd all look at each other to figure out who was actually going to take something on or do something. So it really is about hiring people that have a set of abilities and a set of unique abilities or distinctive capabilities that are different from ours in order to really create a business that customers and clients want to be part of, that our team wants to be part of, and that is really thriving. So we've got to attract talent by developing a healthy team culture. It turns out that people don't join companies or firms anymore, they join cultures. So we've really got to figure out, how do we create a culture that people want to be part of? And people, when we do exit interviews and we talk to people that have left, they don't usually leave companies. They leave their team, they leave their manager, and they leave a particular culture. There are always primary and secondary aspects of a culture. Primarily, I can see the top of the iceberg. If I go to Japan, I see very little of the top of the iceberg. I go to India, I see everything happening the same place at the same time. It's very confusing, and somehow it all works. And it's the same inside companies. We see all the primary visible aspects of a culture: policies, procedures, systems, the culture that people talk about. Yeah, this is a great place to work. They talk about it like it's in the brochure, and people can see it and talk about it. And then after people join, they get a crash course in the fact that there's these unconscious aspects of the culture, power relationships, the informal networks, the alliances that are going on. If there's a spouse in the business, or if there are people on the team that aren't quite operating in the way that it says in this primary brochure. So we've got to take care of both. And then we have an issue in there because we have rank inside these companies and systems that we build, and we're unconscious to it. We are not aware that the net sum of our privileges is different from anybody we hire into the business. And unless we're aware of it and use it really consciously and use it well, our rank tends to hold back our people's ability to actually drive the results and grow the way we expect them to. So as